Oui. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Bienvenue.
Hello everyone and welcome.
On a eu 300 inscrits pour cette...
We had 300 people registered for this virtual workshop. Hello everyone, welcome.
Bonjour, bienvenue.
Bonjour, bonjour à tous.
Hello everyone.
Je laisse arriver tranquillement. Je vais partager l'écran. Alors. Voyez-vous le PowerPoint?
Can you all see the PowerPoint there?
Parfait, on va pouvoir démarrer.
Therefore, we're going to start. This will be our last virtual workshop of this cycle. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. There's been so many of you joining us every week, every 2 other weeks, rather. And this is our last session today.
Je m'appelle Eva Radek. Je suis
Eva Radek. I'm in charge of events and coalitions at Climate Change. I'm here today with my colleague Tanya, who is assistant of program. We're glad to welcome you.
Qui portera donc sur l'aménagement des villes
and we'll be talking today about developing sustainable cities in Africa.
Je mentionne tout de suite que cet atelier virtuel est traduit
This is
simultanément vers l'anglais.
Translated. We have live translation to English.
If you need to follow this session in English, we do have live translation available. So you just have to click on the little globe symbol at the bottom of the screen, and you can follow in English ou dans la langue que vous avez besoin. Voilà. Donc, je profite aussi dès maintenant pour vous dire que si vous avez des questions ou des commentaires.
Also, I'd like to say that if you have comments or if you have any questions throughout this session, you can use the chat box. It's a place where you can write your questions. It's an open space.
Attendez, je vérifie juste que je suis en train d'enregistrer. Là, oui. Très bien. Voilà, donc on ne va pas traîner beaucoup plus comme ça. Je passe maintenant directement aux objectifs de cette...
I'm now going to talk about our objectives for this last workshop dedicated to developing sustainable cities in Africa. Welcome for those who have just joined us now.
Cet atelier a comme objectif aujourd'hui... on a plusieurs objectifs. Le premier, ce sera de garder...
Several objectives. We want to keep the momentum toward the week of sustainable mobility and climate that will be organized in September in Dakar, in Senegal. It will be a major event, physical event both, and virtual event from September 13 to 17, 2021. Today's workshop will help us to actually get in touch with all the members of the coalition and to talk about the objectives of our roadmap that we have been working on with the members of the coalition in collaboration with the co-pilot who are here with us today. The second objective for today's session is to discuss our roadmap that Tanya is going to present to us regarding sustainable cities. And another thing which we enjoy doing, and we believe people have appreciated this, is to continue sharing around best practices in this area, in the sector of sustainable cities in Africa. Which is why we have invited an NGO from Togo with an initiative which we have been able to spot through our mapping. And our last goal for today is to have an interactive session.
Écrire dans le chat et à
As
partir
I said before, feel free to write in through our chat box if you have any question.
Donc, comme je vais parler rapidement de l'événement que nous organisons
I
à
will
Dakar en
now
septembre.
talk briefly about our event in Dakar. There is also a call for contribution that is still open for the week of mobility, sustainable mobility and climate.
Une bonne
If
pratique,
you have
non seulement dans le
a
secteur
project leader of
dans un autre secteur,
initiative, either in sustainable or urban planning or mobility or agriculture, any of the other sectors, please feel free to answer our call for contributions. We are always looking for new initiatives as part of this event, but also for other occasions to complete our mapping.
Bonjour à tous, en fait, ceux qui sont en train de rejoindre toujours, je vous vois nombreux.
We want to greet those who are joining us now.
Une question que
We're going
j'aimerais
to
vous
start
poser,
now with one question which I would like to
mettre,
ask, just as an icebreaker, if I may say. Could you just answer this question via the chat box? I would be really interesting to hear what your answer would be. And the question really,
vous qui êtes là aujourd'hui, mais à l'ensemble
which I want to ask you and to all of the coalition actors, is what is your vision of a sustainable city in Africa for the future? What is your vision? How do you see African cities developing in the future in a sustainable way? Whether it be just a one word to define it, what does it bring to mind when we talk about sustainable cities in Africa? It could be a positive or a negative. It would be interesting to hear your comments on this and read your answers via the chat box. I'm now going to give the floor to my colleague Tanya. She's going to present a roadmap for this coalition. Tanya, over to you.
Thank you, Eva. I'll be switching to English now to present really briefly this roadmap that we have renewed for the coalition. So this roadmap was initially written when the coalition was formed in 2018 at the Climate Change Summit in Abidjan. And since then, we've made certain advances with the coalition. We've had more meetings since then. And now we propose this renewed roadmap, which of course is open to consultation. We're going to have discussions on this, and then we see how we move forward in the coming year. So if you have been following our previous workshops or our other coalitions, you know that the roadmaps always follow the same structure, and they're divided into three parts. The first one is where are we now, which deals a bit with the current context and all the advances made so far, which in this case, the most important thing to note is this increasing urbanization, which is taking place in Africa more than anywhere else in the world, and is set to continue well into this century. And at the same time, you also have an increasing proportion of youth in the population, as you have a broader population pyramid. And while we have this on one hand, on the other hand, you have intensifying problems related to the climate and the environment in cities, which are basically the concentrations of people and economic activity and built elements and infrastructure. And so we see a lot of problems rising out of these, such as the phenomenon of urban heat islands and a lot of environmental degradation and more intense pollution than in other parts of a country. And there's also a lot at stake socioeconomically because cities are the centers where all of this activity takes place. And so there's a lot at stake, and this is a very key juncture for Africa, for African cities going forward, how we plan the cities, how we plan for their resilience, for climate mitigation and adaptation to climate change in these cities in such a way that we're able to move from what is currently a vicious cycle where you have all these weaknesses reinforcing each other towards a virtuous cycle of resilience and of a low carbon city that is self-sustaining. So now we come to the second part of the roadmap, which is how do we get there, which sort of lays out the objectives for the coalition, which are quite broad. And for the moment, these are the different objectives that we have, which also pick up objectives from the previous, the initial roadmap, which of course need continued efforts in order to bear fruit. So the different objectives that we have are continued and expanded education of the population at large, including having climate change in the syllabi for students, or even the continued education of adults as well. And at the same time, we also need a specified, a targeted education program for local representatives so that they're able to plan better for cities, so that they have an awareness of the issues related to climate change and they're able to integrate these into budgeting and planning. And then we also need to see a sort of revamping of the way we have decentralization right now to allow cities to have more autonomy, to take action, to take climate action in their own territories. And we also need development of more efficient systems in terms of energy, waste management, mobility, food systems. All of these, we saw that with the COVID crisis around the world, more in the Western world than in Africa, but we see around the world, we see that these systems were affected by the COVID crisis, which showed us the fragility of these systems. And so now we have the chance moving forward to work on these and to improve these systems. And this brings me to the next objective, which is what is required, a continued mobilization of the various actors, not just local governments, but also the civil society and just engaged citizens who can all contribute towards more sustainable cities. And finally, the last objective that we have is just improving access to finance at the city level. And this is quite something that we've always been working on. And this is also something that requires a follow-up from the part at the municipal level. If there are programs which are already put in place, we need to have better follow-up and a better transparency of the results that have been achieved so far, to be able to make a better case for more bankable projects at the city level. And finally, the third part of the roadmap is how do we get there? And this part is open to consultation. This is where we need your participation the most to find out how you think different non-state actors or even local governments can all contribute towards sustainable cities in Africa. And for the moment, we have these two listed actions, which we're already working on, such as the sharing of information, which we've been doing through our coalition mailing list. We're also thinking of having a newsletter or perhaps even virtual sessions dedicated to each of the coalitions going forward, where it would mainly be the coalition members who take the lead in presenting replicable practices. And this is again related to the second action that we have, which is a mapping of actors and best practices on the continent, which can be replicated and can be scaled up so that we can all come together and put in our best efforts to have sustainable cities. And that's it for the roadmap. And now back to Eva. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Tania.
Thank you, Tanya. Just coming back to the question I asked earlier on, I think it goes together with the second part of the roadmap. Where do we want to go? Just to read a few answers to the question. Thank you for responding, and please continue to do so. What is your vision of a sustainable city in Africa for the future? A city getting involved without limit in the environment and issue, a city that would be functional, that would be resilient, a city that would use local material in order to develop itself, a city that would be adapted to the demography and the population growth, including minorities.
Oui, donc on voit qu'il y a beaucoup de retours sur l'idée de
There's much feedback regarding the idea of a resilient, sustainable city, taking into account the social issues and also environmental and climate issues. We will make a note of your answers to add to our roadmap, which will reflect your input. I also want to add something regarding the third part of our roadmap. How do we get there? We have two main pillars: to share information with non-state actors. We want to stay close to you as actors. If you can identify initiatives, projects for this coalition, so please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. If we can just put more energy into projects which could become common projects within the coalition. Maybe we can talk about that later on. Now we want to go to our next part and welcome our three speakers. We want to thank them for joining us today. Our three speakers, we have Mr. Abdoulaye Sylla, who is an urban expert who worked on the climate issues and territorial issues in the city of Dakar. We also have Mr. Bernard Belinga, Jean-Joël, BBGG. We thank him for being with us today. Also from Cameroon, from Yaoundé, who has worked with the COM-SSA, who will be presenting this interesting project. Our third speaker is Mr. Razak ADJEI, whom we spotted through his project on our mapping. The project is called One House, One Vegetable Garden, and he will be our third speaker. We will first listen to Mr. Abdoulaye. Abdoulaye Sylla.
Oui, donc on voulait commencer par vous poser une question.
We wanted to ask you a question first of all. If you could speak to us as an environmental expert and as someone who has worked on the climate issues in the city of Dakar, could you share with us what is at stake around the issue of social and climate issues in the development of urban cities? Could you share what is at stake? Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Je vais commencer par
I will start now by a quick summary, just to show that the African city and the city of Dakar came out because of a crisis. We can call it the climate crisis, through long years of drought, which Senegal experienced in the 70s and the 80s. The drought led to a setback of agriculture and farming, and population went to the city, left the rural areas through a rural exodus to reach the cities. And it was in the 80s, 1980s, that the Providence state had pulled out from key sectors, social sectors, in environment, health, and education. And because of this confusion,
les populations sont venues et ont occupé, comme on le voit bien, l'ancienne ville coloniale se situait au niveau du plateau et le reste de la population donc a occupé la majeure partie des zones non édificantes. Et depuis la reprise, je retrouve la reprise
since that crisis, things have started picking up. Since 2004, we had some flooding in the most popular districts of the city, which showed us something very important. According to the environmental agency between 1988 and today, 2021, the population of Dakar has increased with over 700,000 people. So how do you manage such a growth? We are trying to plan such a growth and see what we can do, also combined with the climate issues, with the increase of the gas emission, an increase of the population, and also the increase of the needs of mobility, combined with a form of decadence. So we've had to make up with whatever we had. So the population had to develop informal systems for transportation that has been lasting until now. Today, I'm also working on the health aspect, and we have estimates between 2021 and 22, an increase of over 150,000 people still in the city of Dakar, which is an alarming figure. We have also been working on the geographical position of the city of Dakar, which is like an island all along the coastline. With the increase of the population, the need for increasing mobility and infrastructure, the local authorities have not managed to find spaces able to welcome this kind of development and investment. There is a part in the north of the city, on the northern coast of the city, but we're only able to do this by going over what was protecting the city of Dakar. Therefore, the city is being developed under a strategic planning. But we are looking for an inclusive willingness, and we try to meet the population expectations for mitigation and adaptation to climate change. However, we have come to realize that in Dakar, there are areas we do have data, climate data, but these have not been approved in order to be used for the prevention of climate hazards. We are still in some form of fundamental planning, urban planning, and yet these planning do not integrate essential data for climate change. The other issue is the population. The public space has become a place of competition, which is leading to some form of stress. And we need to therefore include in our urban planning how to develop sustainable building. We are building rather an all people's home that will be built solely with climate compatible material. In Dakar, we also want to develop mass transport systems with new equipment, with low energy and low carbon equipment. That's where we are today. We also want to upgrade the waste management, which is another big issue what is at stake in Dakar and in most African cities is actually to develop a city that is already built, like Yaoundé and other places. So we need to start from scratch, if you like, and develop these cities with a new mindset of what we can do and what we have learned from climate issues and from climate hazards due to climate changes. These are the few points which I wanted to highlight to answer your first question. Thank you very much. I think you've actually covered several of my questions in one go. I'm even making a note of what you said regarding the challenges, how to develop a city that is already built, and how can we draw lessons from the health crisis and climate hazards that the cities have to face. I think we will leave it here for now. We will move on to our next speaker, and we'll probably come back to you with more questions after our last speaker. Well, thank you for that first input. Let's move on now to our second speaker, Jean-Joël.
Il est là et il représente l'ONG OAI.
Representing the NGO who has been very much involved in the Covenant of Mayors. This is over to you now, and explain to us what has been your experience with the Covenant of Mayors in Sub-Saharan Africa, and then I will come back to you with more questions. The floor is yours. Thank you, Eva. OAI-DÉMOS.
C'est vraiment une joie de pouvoir partager cette
It's a great joy for me to be able to share with you today about our own experience, which we started in 2015. At the beginning, we started by making an appeal following the Covenant of Mayors. We were trying to select a number of cities to be pilot cities, and these pilot cities had subsidies, and Yaoundé was like an ambassador city. Our first mission was to make sure that cities would get involved. First of all, for cities to get involved against climate change, but also to sign also the Covenant of Mayors. So in Cameroon at the time, we supported 2 cities, Yaoundé 3 and 4. Both of the cities had subsidies and grants to develop their climate plan. The other challenge was to help cities to develop their own urban planning. As the previous speaker was saying, local authorities, cities have various tools for urban planning, various committees. They have a whole range of tools, but these documents, but there was a gap in these documents. None of these documents approach in a significant way the issue of climate change. The convention had 3 pillars. First pillar was adaptation, how to get cities to develop actions in order to help populations adapt to gas emission, climate change, etc. The second pillar is mitigation, how to reduce gas emissions. And a third pillar, which is specific, is regarding the needs of energy. Then we started supporting the cities. we try to identify each focal points in every city. Now for Yaoundé, specifically in those initiatives, there was an organization supporting those two cities. We were supporting those cities in their process. And we started developing the climate plan, and we were to submit this plan, action plan, to the EU for approval. After 2 years, we had the template in English, but things were not finalized. Our first difficulty was that once we had developed our plan, that's only then that the template reached us. We did not stop there. Another work that we carried out as a commission, we wanted to actually work with the central authority. We wanted to make sure that policy from a central power and local authorities could actually align. That was one of the action that we took, which was very interesting, and therefore we were able to strengthen the expertise, especially in terms of data collection. We were also able to mobilize resources and to have the first energy climate plan that was approved. Another approach with the COMOSA was to actually help prepare the other cities for the third phase with other actors, stakeholders. That experience was really interesting and rich. We did this as a need to raise the importance of partnership between the various local authorities. Local authorities did not have the synergy, but that's how we were able to develop a Pan-African platform with the pilot cities. We have trained or formed rather organizations in those pilot cities to support this initiative. This is pretty much what we have done, and the remarkable work that has been done with the COMOSA. Then we prepared the cities for those that already have the energy plan. Now we prepare them to the implementation of the identified project. We have started with various workshops in the sectors of solar energy. And we also have another sector, which is access to drinkable water. And we will continue to support these initiatives in other countries. We already have 200 members that have signed. I hope I have answered your first question. That was a great answer. Thank you. We had talked about some points prior to this workshop about your experience when you were working with other actors as an NGO. How did you go about
les collectivités, mais aussi
working with the local authorities and other actors, whether from the private sectors or from other organizations? Could you maybe just say a few words about this? It was a school for us to do that.
An
NGO like ours, with a target like ours, the first thing was to really see a political willingness being managed. We needed to make sure that that was the case. You will realize that in most countries of Sub-Saharan Africa, we are really behind in terms of decentralization, and that has to become more effective.
composantes de la nation. Mais au Cameroun, en ce qui
to
concerne
include the various aspects or sectors of the nation. I'm very happy to hear my brother from Senegal, from Dakar. What you come to
il faut d'abord une
realize is that locally there needs to be a real willingness to implement a decentralization so that population and organization could have more power and not just be simply people who are being consulted, but they can have more power and more participative power. In that respect, we started by influencing our political leaders at a national level. So we wanted to make sure that the local authorities so every city had to have its own committee with representatives of the population for decision making. Another important factor was regarding the citizen participation. You probably have heard about participative budget. We found that this was a good model, very efficient, that has been approved in Cameroon, and that really showed a clear political willingness to do so. Now, locally, regarding the issues of climate changes are like a luxury, if you like, in Africa. People have other matters, other points of concerns, but we had to get this to our political leaders. So we had to have a strong communication to make sure that our political leaders got hold of this issue. We had to organize some meetings so people to get hold of the issues of climate change. In a city like Yaoundé 3-4, without meeting someone who would know about climate change, because there was a large communication about this. Now, for the civil society, due to our experience, we need how the civil society organization had to be also structured. What people don't understand is that initiatives in climate change require some expertise. You need to have some ideas of what it's all about, have some experience and some expertise to know, for example, about gas emissions, how to reduce gas emissions, how to detect gas emissions, etc. So we wanted to select a number of stakeholders from civil society to support the local authorities. In Cameroon, we have the larger number of members in the coalition because we emphasize the importance of joining the convention rather than coalition, but that was something that we did with a lot of our cities. But we didn't stop there. We also wanted to include universities or people. We have come to realize, that the methods or methodology that has been used was not always in line with what was happening from a national point of view. For example, in Cameroon, we have two pillars. There are two pillars that the state is working. It's adaptation and mitigation. But now, besides that aspect, the other aspect was to understand that the mechanism from collecting data was not the same one. We wanted to have more of an harmonization. we needed to have first the official data. That's another challenge for us. Getting data is not always easy. We need to be able to share disaggregated data. It was important to get hold of the work that was carried out by the COMOSA, but thank God that work has been done. Now, regarding our partners for development, financial partners, we have another issue or another difficulty when you have a climate plan out of the 4 cities that have a climate plan. How from there do you mobilize? I was just about to say that we needed to conclude. It's important that the local authorities should get involved. Okay, that's how I wanted to summarize our experience. Thank you for this beautiful scope and rich experience which you have shared. It's interesting to hear your viewpoint, and you've also made a point regarding the political authorities. I think that goes well in line with our roadmap. Now we're going to move on to our third speaker, Mr. Razak ADJEI, who should be here with us, who has actually commented to say that this was a very rich experience.
Monsieur ADJEI, pardon, si vous êtes là.
Are you there? Maybe you can take the floor. Could you share with us your best practices and your initiative, One House, One Vegetable Garden, and share with us your feedback on this project? Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Razak ADJEI. I'm the leader of this initiative, One House, One Vegetable Garden in Togo. This came from the population of the people in the city of Lomé. We have come to realize that urban population was lacking resources or vegetables from the rural areas. We launched this initiative to give the population from the city to be able to grow their own production. So when we started our initiative, we realized that there were actually several issues, several topics in this initiative. The protection and preservation of the environment, the issues of climate changes. Therefore, we try to organize training workshops to mobilize and raise awareness within the population so that they could grow their own vegetables at home. So for some time now in Lomé, in the capital city, we've seen many households that have been able to produce their own vegetables and who are sovereign in terms of food supply. And we've come to realize that this initiative is also contributed to the answers for climate change. In cities, when you build a house, the roof most of the time is flat. So with our initiatives, we're trying to get people to grow grass on their roofs so that people can also grow gardens there in order to hold the gas emissions and all the dust coming from the city, so the house could be more pleasant. And we've had some feedback, people saying that the houses have become more pleasant. Therefore, that's how we developed ourselves and our action. And then we've tried to develop that same initiative outside of the city, but it didn't really work so well. So we're quite happy with the way things have developed in the city. We organize training sessions for the households, for families. They get a gift. They get tools to help them develop their own garden. They get support from our teams. For some time now, because of the pandemic, we have had to change and adapt our support. Before it was a physical support, people visiting the homes, but with the pandemic, we've had to develop an application to support families differently by the application. That's pretty much what we have done and what we are doing. Thank you. Thank you, Razak, for your presentation. We were thinking about coming back to the positive points and the advantages of developing vegetable gardens within cities and homes. How could this be beneficial during a crisis like the pandemic? Of have any reaction there? Maybe say a few words about the way that this kind of initiative could be strengthened by local authorities. With the COVID pandemic, of course, we try to develop programs to enable people who have spaces in the city who do not use these spaces, to give them to the neighborhood so that the neighborhood could use this land to grow vegetables, because there's a real crisis. So there would be no point in keeping empty places and fields and not use them. Therefore, some people have made those places available for others to grow, for the population to grow, and to grow some gardens. Now, regarding the local authorities, before we started this initiative, we had to go and meet a few mayors who agreed for their towns to be part of this initiative. I have to say that people were rather impressed by our initiatives even before the decentralization of local authorities. And since then, we have not been able to develop our partnership with the mayor sufficiently, which is why I'm saying that the experience from Cameroon is a very rich model, and we could maybe share about this. This is what we're aiming to do here in Togo, for local authorities to actually get hold of this vision of personal vegetable gardens to help contribute to solutions for climate change. Thank you very much. And this workshop is an opportunity also to share about other issues and maybe some obstacles. Thank you very much. I hope we will be able to continue these kinds of discussions in the future, during our physical meetings, either in Dakar during our physical event. It's already 4:20, and we're going to finish in 10 minutes. I'm going to now move on to the Q&A. We have one person already who has raised a question for Mr. Sylla.
Bonjour la famille.
Hello everyone. Hello family. How are you all doing? I'm Ibrahim Diallo. from Dakar.
Et donc, ça fait presque 2 ans que je suis dans un projet qui
For the last 2 years, I've been working on a project for reforesting and protecting the environment. I heard what Mr. Sylla said. I had one question. Have you been thinking about how to educate the children on the issues of climate change? Our children today will become our adults tomorrow. We need to start from an early age to train them or teach them about these issues, to help them understand what is at stake in terms of environment. That's what I wanted to do.
Oui, allez-y, Abdoulaye.
Ok, merci beaucoup, Ibrahim. Donc,
Thank you for your question, Ibrahim.
je vais prendre votre contact et vous envoyer.
I will get in touch with you and I will send you some information, and I will explain to you the inclusive aspect of our project. We didn't actually start from the very little children, but that's a very good initiative. We are now reached our 3rd phase of the Covenant of Mayors. And we will integrate this aspect of how to raise awareness among the children. And we're interested in what you are doing. We will get in touch. Thank you.
Merci.
Super. Merci. Et je vois aussi que Razak,
There is another question. Oh, sorry. Mr. Razak also asked if he could see the climate plan. I don't know if it's something that you can share. Okay, that would be great. Thanks.
Utiliser le canal de Climate Change pour cela.
We will use the Climate Change channel to do this. Yes, that's fine. How do I get in touch? Are you going to send me an email, or are you going to do this with Eva? I will give you my telephone number directly. Okay, thank you. It's good to have spontaneity. Asuma had a question. He raised his hand for a question. If you can just unmute. Mr. Asuma, you need to unmute.
Vous entendez?
Can anyone hear him? No, we can't hear him. There's a sound issue.
Peut-être que vous pouvez essayer sans les écouteurs.
Maybe you can remove your headphones.
Je suis désolée, on vous entend pas très bien.
I'm sorry, but really we cannot hear you. Maybe you could just write the question. Can you write the question, please? We can't hear you. The sound keeps cutting. Maybe you could write your question. I'm not sure he can hear you. Maybe you should just. Could you write the question rather than? And we will come back to you. You can just write your question straight via the chat box. That's fine. Anyone else would like to ask a question or to our speakers or to Climate Change? This is our last virtual workshop today. We will not start again for some time.
Sinon, peut-être, est-ce que les intervenants qui étaient là aujourd'hui ont peut-être des réactions à faire, que ce soit à notre feuille de route qui a été présentée.
Maybe our speakers have any comments to make regarding our roadmap, which Tanya presented, or any comments about the other presentations, feel free to say so as well.
Allô? J'ai cru entendre quelqu'un.
On lève la main.
Oui, bah, allez-y, Razak, si vous avez des questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Razak, for questions. Thank you. I have some questions for our older brother from Cameroon. And I think what they are doing over there can really help my initiatives here in Togo to learn to work with the Covenant of Mayors. I just wanted to congratulate you for what you have done, but my question is as follows. You talked about conventions between the various cities and mayors. It would be interesting to hear about this, what you did with the mayors.
Bon. Allô? Vous me suivez?
Oui, Bernard, allez-y.
Voilà.
Oui, on est là.
Moi, je tiens déjà d'abord à féliciter votre initiative.
I wanted to congratulate you also on your initiative. And I wanted to say to you that we could easily collaborate. We do have an office in Togo. Oh, that's great. We also are in Togo. Us experience that we can share regarding working with local authorities. First, we need to reach the political leaders. Leaders that have social, economic, political missions. But in Africa, people are more focusing on the political aspects. A country like ours, but that's also true for you in Togo, if you want to work with local authorities, there needs to be a convention connecting you to this local authority, and the municipality needs to give their approval. So what we've been doing is to go and talk to the members of the municipality. We have about over 50 conventions signed with the cities, and we will share this with you. And we don't do that simply only with cities, but also with associations, organizations. For example, in Benin, we do that.
D'expérience par rapport aux villes côtières du Bénin. Allô? Allô, vous me suivez?
Can you hear me?
Il y a cet échange d'expérience parce que nous,
we can share experiences.
Notre échanger leurs expériences et l'expertise, et avec les organisations aussi assises comme Climate Change, de comment faire, lorsque nous avons une initiative au niveau de Climate Change, comment relier cette
When we have initiatives like climate change, how do we share this with our local authorities?
Nous sommes conscients d'une chose, parce que c'est aussi ça le problème. Nous partons du postulat que forcément ils n'ont pas de ressources financières. Parce qu'en Afrique, la plupart des maires vont vous dire qu'ils n'ont pas de ressources, ils n'ont pas tort. Mais sauf ce qu'ils oublient, c'est qu'ils peuvent créer et générer des ressources. Et c'est justement ça, comme les changements climatiques doivent devenir un atout de développement pour l'Afrique. Ça doit devenir une opportunité de développement pour nous, les pays africains.
Fortunately, the interpreter has to go. The time was 4:30. I have to leave the floor. Thank you. Bye-bye.
d'un mécaniseur, on parlait un peu des choses pour partager en offre. On va vous donner des contenus et tout ce qu'on peut apporter à votre niveau et vous rapprocher aussi de notre représentant là-bas. Merci. Mais je voulais, par rapport à notre ami du Sénégal qui est intervenu, j'avais une petite préoccupation pour lui. Je ne sais pas s'il est en ligne.
Oui, je suis là.
Voilà. Dans le cadre d'une initiative sur la valorisation des zones côtières avec Djilor, Djida et Mbam, avec la commune de Soum, nous nous sommes rendus compte qu'il y a toute une politique nationale vraiment bien assise et définie dans le cadre de la prévention de ces zones de la mangrove. Je voulais savoir, vous qui êtes au niveau de Dakar, qui subissez aussi ces mêmes phénomènes, votre planification, est-ce qu'elle a intégré tous ces aspects au niveau national? Je voulais savoir.
Oui, oui. Donc dans ce cadre-là, il y a la contribution déterminée au niveau national. Donc, il y a des enjeux qui sont localisés. À Dakar, on n'a pas la question de la mangrove, mais la question de la submersion marine.
Et pourtant, le riz était comme ça devant moi le matin. J'avais mis la sauce avec la sauce dedans.
Oh, si vous pouvez faire attention au micro, merci.
Oui, vous recevez?
Oui. Oui, vous pouvez poursuivre, Abdoulaye.
Oui, je disais que c'est des enjeux qui sont localisés. Donc, ce que vous avez à Soum, c'est un peu dans cette région-là, mais au niveau de Dakar, on a beaucoup plus la question liée à l'avancée de la mer, à la submersion marine. Donc, c'est pris en compte aujourd'hui, le littoral est une zone de convoitise qui amène même l'État du Sénégal à créer une entité de concertation qui est logée directement à la présidence de la République, tellement la question de cette littoral est présente. Donc, je pense que c'est ça, le portage politique est aujourd'hui de mise au niveau de l'État national, de l'État central.
Ok, merci pour la réponse à la question de Jean-Joël. On va vraiment juste prendre une dernière question. On va prendre celle de M. Assouma, qui n'avait pas réussi à le dire à l'oral, mais il vient de l'écrire dans le chat. Je me permets de le lire du coup tout fort et ce sera adressé à M. Sylla et M. Belinga. La question est la suivante. Concernant la place de l'arbre dans nos villes, quelle dimension faut-il dans les lotissements pour que l'arbre ait de la place? Donc, comment garantir la place de l'arbre dans les villes? Et si je peux me permettre, je demanderais à ce que la réponse soit pas plus longue qu'une minute, car on a déjà dépassé le temps et il va falloir conclure cette session aujourd'hui. Donc,
il faut que l'arbre réinvestisse le milieu urbain. Donc, nous, dans le plan climat, on a imaginé à ce que les toitures des immeubles soient utilisées comme ce que notre collègue disait, celui qui a nommé, donc pour faire du micro-jardinage, mais également reverdir l'ensemble des grandes artères de la ville de Dakar. Et dans ce cadre-là, l'État également a créé une agence de reverdissement, donc de reboisement national, avec laquelle donc, la ville de Dakar travaille étroitement.
Merci beaucoup. Et M. Belinga, si vous avez une réponse.
C'est de mettre l'arbre au centre des préoccupations des politiques publiques. L'arbre doit d'abord commencer, ça doit commencer par au niveau de l'éducation à la base. Comme disait mon ami, je crois, du Sénégal, il faut dès la partie des écoles, à la base, là, c'est à partir des écoles, vous avez des plans de reboisement, doivent commencer par montrer à l'enfant l'importance de l'arbre, de l'eau préservée et de l'eau régénérée. Merci.
Important. Ouais.
Ok, bon, après cette courte session de questions-réponses, on va devoir terminer maintenant parce qu'on arrive à déjà 5 minutes plus tard que ce qui était originellement prévu. Mais vraiment, merci pour toutes vos questions, merci pour toutes les réponses fournies de la part des intervenants. Je pense qu'on a eu des échanges très riches aujourd'hui pour ce dernier atelier virtuel. Et on va vraiment faire un suivi, justement, s'il y a des questions qui n'ont pas pu être répondues. On va faire de notre mieux pour vous mettre en lien pour les personnes, pour que vous ayez vos réponses. Et oui, donc vraiment un grand merci à tous et à toutes. Ah oui, vu que cet atelier, c'est vraiment le dernier de ce cycle, je me permets de vous demander si ça ne vous dérange pas d'allumer vos caméras pour qu'on fasse une petite photo de groupe, chose qu'on ne fait pas habituellement, mais là, on s'est dit, c'est l'occasion parce qu'on a eu le plaisir de vous retrouver 2 fois par mois depuis, même plus, hein, depuis juillet 2020. Donc, c'est vraiment le moment qu'on se retrouve tous une dernière fois. Si ça vous va, on va faire une petite photo. Je vais attendre encore une petite minute pour que tout le monde soit prêt. J'attends encore. Vous avez 5 secondes pour allumer votre caméra encore, pour prendre la décision. Allez, 1, 2, 3. Merci à tous. J'ai bien pris la photo.
Merci également. Merci. J'arrive à la fin, je suis désolé. Voilà.
Merci.
Il n'y a pas de souci. Bonjour.
Merci beaucoup. À la prochaine. Merci, à la prochaine.
Oui, j'allais juste profiter pour vous donner quelques informations avant que vous partiez. Pour vous dire que du coup, l'appel à contribution pour la semaine de la mobilité durable et du climat qui aura lieu à Dakar du 13 au 17 septembre 2021 est toujours ouvert. Donc, si vous portez des initiatives, des bonnes pratiques ou des projets particulièrement réplicables et innovants, n'hésitez pas à les partager avec nous, à les soumettre à cet appel à contribution.
Allô, Tania. Allô?
Oui, bonjour.
Allô, Tania.
Oui, Daniel, je vous entends.
Oui, s'il te plaît, bonjour. Mais il aurait fallu que les noms soient lus, hein, des contributeurs, de ceux qui ont quand même déposé des projets déjà, qu'on sache que les projets sont à votre niveau, les projets vous sont parvenus.
Mais oui, mais Daniel, on n'a pas encore clos l'appel à contribution. Il y a jusqu'au 15 juin. Donc, une fois qu'il sera clos, on dira qui est retenu.
Oui. OK. Vous disiez que vous enverrez un lien à ceux qui auront postulé afin qu'ils reviennent sur leur projet, s'ils ont des modifications à faire, qu'ils les fassent. Mais depuis que j'ai envoyé mon projet, je n'ai pas de retour.
Daniel, on va en parler en direct, Daniel. On va laisser les gens repartir.
OK.
Merci à tous.
Mais ça marche. Si vous avez des questions, il n'y a pas de souci.
Merci.
Voilà, et je profite aussi pour vous dire qu'on ne va pas tarder à vous envoyer plus d'infos sur la plateforme digitale. Au revoir. À bientôt, mes amis. Merci à tous et à toutes. À très bientôt. Merci d'avoir participé jusqu'à la fin.
Au revoir. Merci.
Merci à tous. À la prochaine.
À la prochaine. Merci.
À bientôt.